Hey everyone, I'm Derek Hall. In this video, I'm going to make the case for replacing our entire federal tax system in the United States with just a national sales tax. First, let's take a look at a few historical facts related to our current tax system. The U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 4, originally prohibited any direct tax unless that tax was in proportion to the census or remuneration. The income tax is a direct tax, so our system today is nothing like what the founders originally intended. But in 1913, the 16th Amendment was ratified. It partially superseded Article 1, Section 9, Clause 4, and basically legalized an income tax with no restraints. First income tax was passed into law shortly after that, with tax rates ranging from only 1% for the lowest bracket to only 7% for the highest bracket. And as it turns out, only a small percentage of people actually paid that tax. And from those humble beginnings, the tax code has grown into the massive complex monster that it is today. So what I'm suggesting here is to abolish all current federal taxes, including but not limited to the income tax, corporate tax, payroll tax, and capital gains tax, and replace it all with just a national sales tax. Repeal the 16th Amendment, abolish the IRS, and assign the tax collecting responsibility directly to the U.S. Treasury. Now, in case you're wondering how realistic and feasible all of this might be, let's take a look at a few numbers. The required sales tax rate can be approximated by dividing the federal revenue by GDP for each year for recent years. GDP represents the total value of all goods and services sold in the United States, so that's a good representation of the potential tax base for a sales tax. As it turns out, 20% tax rate will be sufficient based on the following chart. This chart shows federal revenue as a percentage of GDP for each of the years shown. So this is exactly the set of numbers that we need. And you can see here for the year 2000, that was the highest bar at 20%. The highest bar more recently was in 2022 at 19.6%. So this chart shows that a 20% sales tax will be plenty to fund the federal government. Now, in case you're wondering what the GDP is right now in the United States, it's almost at 30 trillion according to this chart. Now, in case you're wondering about tariffs, the potential tax base for tariffs would include all U.S. imports, the total value. And right now, that total value is most recently at $4.11 trillion, according to this webpage. So that's a lot less than the U.S. GDP of almost 30 trillion. So basically, that would say that tariffs would not be enough to fund the entire federal government today by themselves. But tariffs can be good for other purposes, such as international negotiations. Now, back to the sales tax analysis, the tax rate wouldn't necessarily have to stay at 20%. With the prospect of reducing government size and spending, maybe the required federal revenue could also be reduced, and therefore we need a lower tax rate. Now, here are a few benefits of having only a sales tax with no other type of tax. It's highly stimulating to the economy because the supply side tax burdens are completely removed. Therefore, it results in increased supply and considerably lower prices in the economy. So a 20% sales tax wouldn't be like a 20% inflation. This whole process would result in lower prices first, and then the sales tax would be applied to the lower prices. And oh, how nice it would be to no longer have income tax withheld from your paychecks. Also, this arrangement would eliminate the current tax code complexity, which would especially help small businesses and non-wealthy individuals. The complexity is arguably the worst aspect of our current tax code. And finally, having only a sales tax would discourage consumption while fueling economic productivity and investment, which is the exact opposite of what our current federal tax system does. And I'm not suggesting that consumption is necessarily a bad thing. We all have to consume products and services out of necessity as a part of life, but it puts a check on excessive consumption by people who have a lot of money. Now, here are just a few benefits of sales tax specifically as compared to income tax. The income tax is a direct tax, of course. It's tied to the individual. IRS can and does target individuals. Income tax results in unequal treatment of individuals. That ties back into the complexity issue. All I got to do is look at all the very unique deductions that apply only to specific people in unique situations. And then also individuals must file tax returns, and individuals have personal tax liability. On the other hand, sales tax is an indirect tax tied to the product or service being transacted. It's immediately collected by the business at the time of the transaction. No burden on individuals other than paying the tax, of course, at the time of the transaction. And no tax return filing responsibility, and no personal tax liability. I don't see how that wouldn't be incredibly appealing to just about everybody, except maybe the tax professionals who currently make a living off of our current tax code. Now, you might have heard some people quickly dismiss the sales tax as being regressive because they say it requires people to pay the same amount of tax for the same set of products and services regardless of wealth status. But that argument is highly flawed, because it seems to assume that everyone spends and consumes the same amount, when really the wealthier a person is, the more that person is likely to buy, therefore that person will pay more sales tax. And so in practical reality, the sales tax is likely closer to being proportional, which is a good thing. And if sales tax is so bad because it's allegedly regressive, then why can the states have sales tax? Well, some of those same people complain that the states are levying a regressive tax against their citizens. Ultimately, I suspect that people who dismiss the sales tax as regressive either are unwittingly engaging in groupthink or are dependent on some hidden agenda that causes them to want to keep our current tax system as it is. In any case, labeling the sales tax as regressive is totally silly. And finally, here's one more analysis to explain why I like the idea of having only a sales tax. Economic activities involving money. The first activity I have listed is you can earn money. So obviously you're contributing labor, products, or services to the economy. So that's a good thing. You can invest money. That funds business growth and helps the economy. You can save money, which can have the same effects as investing if you hold it in a bank account, because it contributes to the pool of money that your bank has available to extend loans. You can donate money, which helps others and helps charitable causes, obviously. And finally, you can spend money. So in that case, you're consuming products and services from the economy. And with a sales tax, that's the only thing that would be taxed. So, and that's also the only activity that involves consuming real value from the economy. All the others involve either contributing value or are neutral. So that's why I like the idea of a sales tax. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to subscribe to my channel. I will have other similar content coming soon. Thanks.